1990 was an interesting year for G.I. Joe. The years prior heavily focused on repaints and sub-teams, like 1988's Night Force and Tiger Force, and more Night Force in '89 along with the Python Patrol. This was all changed in 1990 when it was predominantly new characters with just one sub-team. A team that was a reuse and recolor team, but still commanded a premium price point. In the fall of 1990, DiC Entertainment launched a new G.I. Joe animated series, which found this team featured. So, with the stage set, let's explore the air with Sky Patrol. The Sky Patrol line featured multiple characters and vehicles featuring, as the box says, chrome metallized parts that is noted as a radar reflective protectant coating. These are refurbished and re-equipped assets that have been refielded with the latest in high-impact armaments, allowing the G.I. Joe team to maintain airspace dominance over Cobra Command. These vehicles allowed Sky Patrol, despite the name, to deploy on land, sea, and in the air. Both the vehicle lineup and the figures, that mind you are not designated drivers, are all reused molds. G.I. Joe took older Sharks, which is a submersible, high-speed attack and reconnaissance craft, a flying submarine, repainted it with shiny bits and represented it as a one-man attack craft armed with elevating twin cannons. The Shark became the Sky Shark. In other markets, the Shark was spelled with a K instead of a C and had different box art. They also refurbished and repainted the Heavy Articulated Vehicle Ordnance Carrier, or Havoc, metallized it and dubbed it a Sky Havoc, a heavily armored transport with scout craft. One vehicle didn't change names. That's the Skyhawk. Skyhawk is a twin SK-34 Series 1 high bypass turbofan engine powered VTOL craft. Sky Patrol Skyhawk switched to dual pivoting GX-3902 jet thrusters and was now chrome with swiveling underside laser guided machine guns. In 2016, the team got the Sky Patrol version of the Sky Striker along with the Sky Patrol Sky Sweeper. The Sky Sweeper was advertised alongside the Cobra Hydra that came with an Aero Viper pilot, reused firebats. Their other plane was a captured Night Raven S3P. This too was stripped of its black paint and redone in chrome metal. The name was changed from Night Raven to Sky Raven. It's based on a few different airframes that intersect and relate to each other on Sky Patrol and the reflective surfaces themselves. The United States Air Force in the mid-1950s wanted to combine the range of the Stratofortress with the speed of the Hustler and came up with Weapon System 125 Alpha, the nuclear version, along with WS-110, the conventional version that I likened to Cobra's Condor in a previous video. This eventually evolved into Strategic Air Command's XB-70 Valkyrie, a Mach 3 Plus prototype deep penetration supersonic strategic bomber designed in the 1950s during the early Cold War period. It was developed alongside the XF-108 Rapier, its companion supersonic interceptor. It just so happens that the XB-70 and another plane had their first test flights the same year, 1964. Enter the SR-71 Blackbird. Almost. Valkyrie was a strategic bomber and Blackbird was meant for recon. In 1974, DARPA began working more and more with low RCS or radar cross-section concepts. The design of the MiG-31 Firefox from the Clint Eastwood film based on Craig Thomas's novel falls somewhere in here. The movie designer, though, says he based his design on a MiG-25 Foxbat combined with the Phoenix from G-Force Battle of the Planets. In 1964, President Johnson unveiled FX-934 to the world, a high-altitude Mach 3 jet. This was the A-11, which later became the YF-12A Interceptor. The secret YF-12 was a twin-seater version, which also served to keep the more secret SR-71 out of the news. These look a lot like the Cobra Night Raven S3P with Valkyrie forward canards. At one point, under a project named Senior Bull, the D-21 tagboard drones were fitted to B-52s. The A-12 Oxcart was developed under the project codenamed Senior Crown and were operated by the CIA. Of 13, 3 were the M21 variant that carried the D-21 drone, with the M meaning mother and the D in the D-21 meaning daughter. This drone feature you can see on the G.I. Joe's variant, the one that Cobra stole. Senior Peg was a stealth advanced technology bomber that lost to Senior Ice, or the B-2 Spirit, built under the Senior CJ program. Senior Trend followed Have Blue, nicknamed Hopeless Diamond, that became Lockheed's F-117A Nighthawk. The SR-75 Penetrator and XR-7 Thunder Dart drone were speculated to be a high-altitude hypersonic spy plane codenamed Aurora. There was a tester model influenced by Bill Sweetman's 1993 book about the officially denied alleged SR-71 replacement. It was called Aurora by researchers because it matched a budget item from the Pentagon in 1985. I guess this is a good time to mention Tester's other model, the F-19 concept that G.I. Joe used to make their own stealth fighter, the Phantom X-19. Officially, the SR-71 was put into warm storage and grounded. The U-2 spy plane took its place until the Blackbird was brought back out soon thereafter, even as Lockheed continued with UAVs like the RQ-3 Darkstar. Lockheed built its F-22 ATF under a program called Senior Sky to compete in the Air Force's Advanced Tactical Fighter program that found the YF-22 Raptor dueling it out in the skies with the YF-23 Black Widow. One of the YF submitted designs looks a hell of a lot like a scaled-down Blackbird too. This was happening around the time the US Navy was developing its own stealth bomber, the A-12 Avenger II, under the ATA or Advanced Tactical Aircraft program. Northrop based the subsonic high alpha research concept, or SHARC, which is spelled just like the G.I. Joe Sky Patrol Sky Shark, on the YF-23. So in the early 90s, under a program called Senior Spud, half of a F-117 Nighthawk was covered in a reflective surface. The popular idea here is that the mirror coating helps defeat IRST, or infrared search and track technology. This would have flown with the Vista NKC-135. The metallic coverings would have been highly reflective to the naked eye, though maybe they're playing with signature returns to reduce priority on the threat matrix. It may not be as big a factor since they have been playing with light shape manipulation with things like Yehudi lights and electrochromic panels called flickering skins that flicker heat signatures to overload an incoming missile's onboard computers. So maybe that's why, in the past few years, we've seen F-22 Raptors and F-33C flying with mirror coatings. Some on board the USS Abraham Lincoln, and some like the chromed out Raptors flying out of Nellis. There were the mirrored Son of Ares jets too at China Lake a few years ago. Lockheed Martin's IRST-21 Legion pod, that per Lockheed is a quote, multifunction sensor system that supports collaborative targeting operations in radar-denied environments. Instead of IRST sensors being embedded on an aircraft's nose cone, the latest modalities like that found on the F-35 use a distributed aperture system, DAS, with infrared sensors all over the airframe, allowing for full spherical coverage, which in turn allows for protection and tango detection from all angles and helping exploit an IRST weakness. Range detection. Some of the latest defensive mechanisms employ thermographic dispersion tactics. One such way is reflective surfaces, just like the ones that Sky Patrol uses. Reflective Havglass 5 paint can be combined with a RAM coating, metamaterials, and other surfaces to both actively and passively cancel radar deterrents. Havglass 2's Pacer Gem coating was applied to F-16s to reduce IR, while Pacer Mud was a RAM coating. Havglass 5 is now on seed-assigned Block 50 F-16s and some Block 30s. It's also said that some of this helps deflect directed energy weapons, lasers, just like Sky Patrol. So with all that being said, was Sky Patrol ahead of their time? The Sky Patrol commercial says that the coating reflects enemy fire, and going by the animated series, that means it deflects lasers. And by the way, don't worry, all of that's declassified, so OPSEC is maintained. Of note, these vehicles did not come with the sub-team's figures, but there were multiple figures that were part of the Sky Patrol sub-team. Skydive is the Sky Patrol leader. He was born Linton Phoenix in Pensacola, Florida. When not leading his patrol on the battlefield, you can find him desk jockeying his second 42 Alpha MOS. But don't underestimate Skydive. For an entire decade, he was on staff at the Ranger School at Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, and as his file card notes, earned a reputation for being the toughest NCO in the program. He would skip breakfast so he wouldn't spoil his appetite for snakes and water bugs. His soldiers resented him for pushing him so hard, but later thanked him for his train hard, fight easy training methodology. Quote from his file card says, Sky Patrol operates deep within enemy territory, cut off from supply and support. There can be no margin for error when you're that far behind the lines. One mistake and you're history. Only a battle-hardened vet can pull off a mission without a hitch. That's just the type of leader you'll get with Skydive, the most successful head knocker in Sky Patrol. Skydive is a repaint of Mark Pennington's Cobra Mamba pilot Gyro Viper from 1987. And quick aside, check out this concept art on display at the Rock Island Arsenal Museum in Illinois. Looks a whole lot like inspiration for the Mamba, right? Wallace Baducci was born in Chicago, Illinois. Later, after joining the U.S. Army, he took on the codename Static Line. And after joining G.I. Joe's Sky Patrol, became the team's designated demolitions expert. But he's not the one blowing things up. Static Line diffuses explosives and renders them inert. This comes in handy on deep penetration missions as the team works their way through minefields and rigged obstacles. He has a knack for finding hard-to-find things like money on the ground because he examines every square inch of ground before he steps on it. A skill that makes him great at what he does. When not outside the wire, Static Line uses his aircraft maintenance skills to keep the team's air assets at peak combat readiness. He's not related to Ralph Baducci, as their last names, though phonetically the same, are spelled differently. Static Line is a repainted backstop, the Persuader driver from 1987. Drop Zone was born in Oklahoma as Samuel DeLisi. He joined the U.S. Army and later G.I. Joe's Sky Patrol, and per his file card, Valcard loves his job, every OD bit of it. He's at his best when the cold wind hits his face as soon as he steps out of a C-130 transport at 20,000 feet. He relishes the smell of gun oil and nitro solvent on his MAC-10. The sound of artillery rounds soaring overhead is music to his ears. He still can't believe that he actually gets paid to have this much fun. He clearly is the team's weapons specialist, apropos given his trigger-happy nature, along with being a Special Forces advisor. And Drop Zone is a repaint of the 1986 Stratoviper. Airwave is designated as the audible frequency specialist, likely a 25 Echo, which is an electromagnetic spectrum manager. His second MOS is listed as Signal Corps Adjutant to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was born in Louisville, Kentucky as Cliff Mewett, not to be confused with the Colonel Courage Cliff Mewett that came out a couple years later. His file card says he can coax a signal through a shot-up PRC-77 receiver transmitter from the bottom of a valley in an electric storm. That is an incredible feat with damaged equipment, atmospheric interference, and lack of LOS or line of sight. His Army-Navy portable radio comms were replaced by the SINCARs or single-channel ground and airborne radio system, so we can assume he's qualified now on that too. Airwave is a repainted 1986 Motor Viper, the driver of the Cobra Stun. Airborne came to the team to be a parachute assembler, a 92 Romeo MOS. That's called a parachute rigger in the Army. He's also a Whiskey 68W, a battlefield medic. This Airborne is different than the Franklin Tall Tree Airborne that hails from the Navajo Reservation in Arizona. This E7 is Robert 6 from Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. He's the foremost expert in the Army on the T-10 parachute and gets it all rigged and maintained for the paratroopers. Hasbro used 1987 lift tickets body repainted to make Airborne. Altitude is the Sky Patrol recon scout and a combat artist. He was born in Cambria, California as John Edward Jones. He's a full-blooded Apache Indian, along with being the son of a famous Hollywood stuntman. First, he leveraged his artistic skill set in the cartooning and animation space before finding a new career in the military. His ability to capture visual imagery in his head and translate it to paper makes him a great recon scout. In fact, his file card says that his sketches are so accurate that they use his drawings instead of topo maps. 1986's Slipstream was used to make Altitude. Ben Thomas, codenamed Air Raid, joined Sky Patrol in 2016. Thomas was born in Annapolis, Maryland, later joining an officer training school program at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. He continued on with advanced flight testing training, and he conducted many flight tests for advanced experimental aircraft and aerospace weapon systems, maybe some of those that we've talked about earlier. This experience made him perfect for Sky Patrol when he was assigned to fly the Sky Patrol Sky Striker. This is the second version of Air Raid. The first is Franklin Tall Tree. These all came with the Sky Patrol parachute pack, which itself was just like the parachute pack you could order by mail in 1985. Estrel and Brazil added Aguia Commando to the team, using parts from Sneak Peek, Scoop, and parts of Maverick. Maverick, Sneak Peek, and now Knockdown were also used in Brazil to make Albatross. Sky Patrol there battled Cobra, Night Vulture, and Flying Scorpion. Because of the timing of the release in 1990, Sky Patrol only made brief appearances in the DiC animated series that followed Sunbow. D-Day at Alcatraz opens with the team of Captain Gridiron, Pathfinder, and Sub-Zero in Lapland, who are complaining to Skydive about how it's too cold. Skydive and his Skyraven tells Sub-Zero to chill. After the team is ambushed by Metalhead and Cobra, Sky Patrol flies in for some close air support. That allowed G.I. Joe to take Cobra Commander, Destro, and Metalhead into custody, where they were imprisoned at Alcatraz. Turns out that was part of Cobra's plan to steal a submarine called the Comstock Lode. Meanwhile, Sky Patrol was at their own headquarters. Pathfinder was there with them training. They then went to a place called the Raw Dog Pie Shop. Yep, that got past the censors. Anyway, Skydive and Pathfinder took out the Baroness and some night creepers with some pies and some rope, of all things. Cobra broke out, and then Gridiron dressed down Skydive for helping Pathfinder break onto the island to recon, getting captured and leaving the submarine less defended. When Cobra attacked the Comstock Lode, Gridiron ordered Skydive to scramble Sky Patrol. The Sky Patrol Skyhawks launched a salvo of missiles at the submarine, which was already underway, trying to sink it before it dove. Cobra Commander activated a secret device that created an electromagnetic bubble around the submarine, rendering the missiles useless. This also knocked out power to the Skyhawks. In Part 2, Skydive steered a Skyhawk right at the submarine, ramming it just as he jumped out. The Skyhawk managed to damage the Comstock's rudder. Cobra then used Alcatraz as a dry dock to repair the sub that was using the PM generator as air defense, which meant it was up to Sky Patrol and a squadron of Skyraven and Sky Sharks to seed some clouds over the island. That was so Gridiron's G.I. Joe glider that the Skyraven was towing could float in through the fog bank undetected. So then Gridiron actually used a Sky Patrol parachute when he jumped out. When Gridiron, Speedy Brown, the Warden, and Pathfinder shut off the power, Sky Patrol was able to take out the Alcatraz air defense to allow the Joe's ground elements to move in. G.I. Joe, of course, won the day. In the Mind Mangler, we see more of Sky Patrol, with Static Line portrayed as a perpetual worrier, not warrior. Altitude drew a funny picture of Drop Zone, which he happened to like. That was all cut short when the team was scrambled to help Duke and his Retaliator, who'd been overwhelmed by a squadron of Fang 2s. Duke was shot down and captured, and so Sky Patrol went in to rescue him, jumping out of a Skyraven in the process. Drop Zone in another Skyraven proved the airframe's coating to be impervious to laser fire while also being invisible to radar. It was only when Drop Zone is shot down and we catch up with the ground team that we see a Sky Havoc for the first time. They were able to rescue Duke by the end and escape. The next episode was Biok. Lady J explained how the Skyraven, just like the General, were integrated with the pit's fully automated defense system. For a performance, Skydive, Airborne, and Airwave were pretending to be Cobra pilots. Cobra's AI named Biok heard of this when he was talking to Destro, and they of course used Biok to attack G.I. Joe, and because of a simple insult, Biok really didn't like Skydive, and he let everybody know. Skydive later jumped in a Sky Havoc to rescue Lady J, who was now trapped inside a General vehicle due to Biok's attack. So here's the new hangar. First, what happened to their HQ? And second, those are definitely not to scale. The team got help from Destro and his Robot Hawk to destroy Biok's mainframe that was hidden in some Mayan ruins. Skydive also challenged Biok to combat, him and a Skyhawk and the AI controlling a Skyraven. The virus was installed and Skydive took out the last of Biok and the jet. Mission accomplished. Lady J was flying with a squadron of Sky Patrol Skyhawks while attacking a Cobra base in the episode Stuck on You. Pathfinder jumped out of another Skyhawk to chase Cobra Commander while LJ took remote control of his Skyhawk. Duke and Lady J flew around in Skyhawks looking for Pathfinder and CC, and they all made it out by the end. In 2016, David Lane and Fub Publications put out a convention-exclusive comic book, the 9th edition of G.I. Joe vs. Cobra, dubbed Project Downfall, which pitted Sky Patrol against the Night Vultures and Cobra Air Devils over the Rocky Mountains. Cobra was attacking airfields in the area, breaking through defenses and stealing technology, and so Sky Patrol was brought to bear on the Cobra aggressors. Sky Patrol also showed up in A Real American Hero issue 214 during the ceremony at the pit following Snake Eye's death. The original 6 members of the subteam came out in 1990, and there were plans for a 2003 run of Sky Patrol, which would have been a set of 3-packs exclusive to Walmart. The plan was for them to include working parachutes, but the chutes didn't pass safety standards, and so the line was pulled back, and instead Walmart got some desert-themed G.I. Joes and urban-colored Cobra. 2003 Sky Patrol were, however, on display at the Toy Fair in 2003. Not all was lost, as a small production run did make it out and into Asian markets, which found their way into the hands of collectors anyway. That team included Sky Patrol versions of Duke, Lowlight, and Snake Eyes for G.I. Joe with Alley Viper, a high-speed Sentry Driver, or Ribbit, depending on your source, along with Storm Shadow representing Cobra. In 2016, along with the comic book, the team was released again in new deco for the G.I. Joe convention that year in Colorado. This is when Air Raid joined the team. The 2016 team were tasked with taking on the Cobra Adders team, which included Sky Creeper, Cobra Flying Scorpion, the 3 Air Devils, Cobra Black Vulture, and the Cobra Night Vultures. Sky Patrol also used a new jump pack. Adders here is an acronym that stands for Aerial Deployment Daredevil Elite Recon Specialists, in addition to being a type of snake. If it were me, I would pair up Sky Patrol with Battle Force 2000 and Air Commandos to build out the force more, especially since there's some overlap in mission profile and in the figures themselves. There you have it, the story of Sky Patrol. For now, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.